An hour wind gust, just outrageous. One cell, another cell merge, and boy, did they create some very strong winds there into eastern Kansas as well. You can see it again. There's another, there's one, and boom, look at that big bow echo that pushed eastbound. So wind was huge. Wind is going to be another issue today, as well as hail. Tomorrow is when you really get that tornadic threat in. We do have a little vorticity right here in Iowa causing these storms, and this batch of rain is all going to be storming eastbound over the lake, causing quite a bow echo into Michigan. We'll show you that in just a minute. Milwaukee, this is right on your doorstep downtown, I should say. The suburbs are getting it. Waukegan, Chicago will get in on some storms as well. So we have plenty of moisture here in the mid to upper levels indicated by the white and the green in these clouds. We also have jet energy. You can see that streaming into the picture. And it's not only at the upper levels, even at the lower levels. We do have energy that could cause storms to bubble up and storm up. Fronts, cold fronts, warm fronts, low pressure, and plenty of moisture. And then there's those mid-level southwesterly winds. Those are really going to energize things for us. And this is kind of the beginning of what's going to be a really rough, let's say 24, 36, 48 hours. Because things are just going to get more active, not only as we go through the day, but also as we head into tomorrow. We have a bigger severe weather threat. So hail is definitely going to be an issue. 1 inch in diameter is considered severe hail, so we could see it a lot bigger than that, twice as big and even bigger than that. I think winds are going to be an issue out of some of these thunderstorms today. And watch this little vorticity counterclockwise spin around, come through Green Bay, Milwaukee, Chicago, so we get another round coming through. And then it's really going to bow out as it gets over into Michigan. Look at that. That's an indication of strong winds coming through. And then notice we reset back to the west, where we see storms really fire up, unfortunately, as we head into the overnight hours. So that's not great that when the sun goes down, things really pop off. Our Torcon today is a 3, but Jordan, as we head into tomorrow, we are going to see a better chance for some stronger thunderstorms.
Yeah, the problem
being said that by midweek, these should all be taken care of. Over 200,000 in Harris County, which is where Houston is located, that are without power. And notice our heat index through the day will get into the mid 90s. By tomorrow, heat index is over 100, but 95 versus 100. I don't know. To me, it's still very, very hot either way. And if you're in the direct sunlight, by the way, that's in the shade. In the direct sunlight, it's going to feel even hotter by 10 degrees or so. And notice there's no rain in sight, which is great for the recovery efforts. Not so great to try to cool off. Look at these heat indices. All the way through the weekend here, we're essentially right around 100 degrees. So if it is hot and you have a generator, you want to make sure you don't run it in your house or your garage. Do not plug into walls. You want to have a heavy-duty extension cord, and you turn it on before plugging in any appliances to it. Now, it's not just Houston. The heat is going to spread into the Midwest and the Northeast by Wednesday. Boston will be 20 degrees above average. Look at Chicago. A lot of us 10 to 15 degrees above average over the coming days, even hotter in the Windy City here at 87 degrees. Some of the pools are starting to open. I know it doesn't really happen for everyone officially kind of until Memorial Day, and it takes time for that water to heat up. It'll still be very cold unless you have a heater. San Antonio, we also have those heat indices above 100 for us. So it's going to be pretty major heat risk here into Texas. But notice that we will have a moderate heat risk all the way into the Great Lakes. I guess if you get hot, hop into those Great Lakes because they will definitely be very cold still. If you are hot, stay hydrated. You want to be in a cool place, kind of obvious here. And watch out for poor air quality, Jordan, because that can be a big deal when you have that hot, stagnant air.
Yeah, I was just talking to
Jim, you know, it's a tough one. When you go to Hawaii, you expect the weather to always be beautiful, but that's not actually always the case.
Not on the east.
Welcome back into America's Morning Headquarters. I'm meteorologist Stephanie Abrams alongside meteorologist Jordan Steele and Jim Cantori. And I'll tell you what, potent storms plowing through the plains. Look at this, a haboob popping off here, huh? In Kansas, a wall of red and brown hauling over the homes there in a neighborhood. Storms also looming large in Oklahoma as a supercell, big rotating thunderstorm hovered over the Yukon area, producing a lot of cloud to ground strokes and a tornado that has been reported in this area as well. Flipping cars, as you can see, and the animals, they weren't worried about it at all. It was far enough away for them. Jim, they know better than we do. They sense these storms and they know where to go and what to do.
They do often.
Want to stay dry, but we're also going to stay very hot and humid. Now we're less than 2 weeks away until the official start of the 2024 hurricane season. We're keeping you protected before we get a named storm. And this week we're talking all things October. So first, let's look back at October. Everywhere you see a dot is where we've had a storm originate from, going all the way back to 1950 to 2022. So they really span a large area. And some of those storms can start to get pulled off the coast with boundaries and fronts that are coming through as we get into fall. And we see them kind of sweep things out to sea. But I mean, you can't sleep on October. Some of the biggest hurricanes that we've ever had have been in October, including Hurricane Wilma, which has the lowest central pressure on record, 882 millibars. Sandy was an October storm, so there have been big ones. And as we go through the week, we are going to go back and look at those storms and give you some more detail. But from September to October, the activity typically starts to chill out a little bit here. But again, you can't sleep on it because you can't have those bigger storms. So what should you be doing right now? Getting all your supplies. Get your battery-powered things, go in them, make sure the batteries aren't corroded, start to stock up on batteries. Those aren't going to, go bad, at least through hurricane season. Get a pack or two. Stock up your first aid kit. That's something that's not going to go bad for the most part. And then you're going to want to get 1 gallon per person per day for 7 days. That's what will last you. And then also perishable foods. Think about your prescriptions and also getting cash from the ATM. I know, Jordan, a lot of people are saying, what's cash? What do you even mean get cash? But I'll tell you what. When all the power is out, you can definitely exchange for some goods.
Yeah.
And how it came through Kansas, 90, 100 miles an hour into Salina. And look at this bow, woof, as it came through eastern Kansas. All of those are wind reports. And you can get a lot of damage just from wind. It does not have to be a tornado. And we could see more of that today. We have a little spin in the atmosphere here, a little vorticity. That is going to make its way through the Chicagoland area as we head later in the day. Milwaukee, a few lingering showers, but that is going to bring storms from Green Bay all the way down to Chicago as we head into the afternoon hours. So get prepared for that. We could have some delays perhaps at the airport. Loads of moisture in the atmosphere where you see the white and the green. That's the mid to upper levels of the atmosphere. Here we have our jet stream that is cutting across and energizing the storms and will help energize what we get later today. That will help kick those off. And at the surface, we have ample lift and ample oomph. So we're talking cold fronts, warm fronts, low pressures, and loads of moisture ahead of that. Other than that, if you look at the mid-levels, you've got winds punching in, and we know what that does, right? It really gives them an extra boost when you talk about the storms developing. And we'll get that first round to go through. It's really kind of the second round to go through the Great Lakes. Then we reset back into the plains, and then we're going to reset again as we head into tomorrow. But notice around North Platte, that's where we could have our biggest damaging hail that could dent cars and roofs, and then wind also 75 miles an hour or greater. So though the tornado condition index is low today, with a 3 on the scale, you could still get wind damage out of these. So watch this little vortice roll through. So around noontime, that's when things are going to get rough right around the lakefront. And then we see the winds really bow out as this heads into Michigan, so that and into Indiana. So that means very strong winds. Then we reset back into the plains. Remember, we had that jet energy coming in. That will also make things pretty rambunctious as we head into the overnight hours. And that continues really all night, which is the worst possible time to have storms. They will still be ongoing as we head into tomorrow morning. And then for Tuesday, we have another piece of energy coming in that's well off the coast. And Jordan, we have a higher chance for tornadoes as we head into our tomorrow, but we cannot rule them out today.
So let's zoom into
in Texas at the end of last week. Also a deadly derecho. National correspondent Justin Michaels is live in Houston. And Justin, it is definitely going to be hot for the recovery efforts. If people maybe this weekend weren't tuned in to what was happening, what has gone on since this happened Friday night until now?
Well, I'll tell you what, Steph, it has been.
So I get why they've closed that down, and I wouldn't be shocked if maybe still some loose pieces. If you get a thunderstorm rolling through Houston, it could cause some more of that glass to fall from that building. The story really in the entire eastern half of the U.S. is going to be the heat. That is going to be not only into Houston, but notice it gets up into Chicago, New York, 75. We get even hotter as the week goes on, and we have those heat indices as well that Justin was mentioning. 95 will be our peak heat index index today, but as we look over time, we basically, our heat index is going to sit around 100 degrees all the way through the weekend here. But it's not just in the south. Notice through the entire week, we are going to be feeling that warmth for places like Boston, when by Wednesday we're going to be 20 degrees above average. Look at Chicago. Look at Indianapolis and Nashville. 89 degrees, and remember, this is a temperature taken in the shade, so keep that in mind. San Antonio, heat index there above 100, maybe be by the Riverwalk, cool off a little bit, take one of the rides on the little boat that goes through the Riverwalk. Tomorrow, the highest risk for heat issues will be into Texas, but notice that orange spreading into the Great Lakes and into the Northeast. There's a moderate risk, and we're not used to it also into the Great Lakes feeling heat like this early, so stay hydrated in a cool place. Think about canceling maybe some of those outdoor activities, or not even canceling, just moving them inside, and watch out for that poor air quality, because with this hot, stagnant air, the air quality tends to be not very good. Wednesday, we do have a lot of the Northeast in our moderate heat risk for us, so you really have to take precautions. Look at Boston, our average high, 68 degrees. We are going to be in the upper 80s as we head into our Wednesday, and we cool off, Jordan, as we head into our Friday here.
Yeah.
There in Central Florida. Let's take a look ahead in the T-Mobile Coast to Coast forecast and give you a peek at temperatures in your area as you plan for the week ahead, the travel week ahead. And of course, a lot of people might be traveling towards the end of the week as we get into our Labor Day. But here is our first system coming through. More energy as we head into tomorrow. We stay dry, notice, in the south, which is great, so we can get some recovery efforts there into Houston. Wednesday and then into Thursday, storms into the Northeast. Staying warm in a lot of places. Chicago well above average even into our Thursday. Friday, it's pretty stormy in the center of the country, up and down the Mississippi River, with the west staying dry. For our Saturday, it really all hangs in the east here. As we go into our dog walking forecast, you can't walk a dog down that. I mean, you'd have to have shoes on. If they've stopped cars because cars could get glass into their tires, and so it's good that that area is kind of shut down. If you are taking your dog for a walk, you always worry about that, Jim. We are less than 2 weeks away until the official start of the 2024 hurricane season. We're keeping you protected before we get a named storm, and so today we want to look back at the climatology for October, what we can see, what we've seen in the past, what we typically see, and then going forward the rest of the week, we're going to just highlight a few October storms that have happened and some ways that you can prepare, like Hurricane Michael was an October storm, right? That was the fourth known Category 5 to make landfall, and we'll talk about the winds and winds associated with that, not only at the coast, but all the way inland. But if you look back to 1950, I mean, really in October, you still can have a wide range of development. Everywhere you see a dot is where we have seen a tropical entity develop. And in October, you can start to see some of those fronts come down, right, as we're getting deeper into fall here. And that can pull some of those storms out to sea, or it can pick them up and help them ride right up the coast. So that's something that we do watch for. September is really gangbusters. In October, it falls off, but you can't sleep on October because there was Wilma in October, the lowest pressure on record in the Atlantic. Michael, as we mentioned, Sandy was also an October storm. So there are still some big storms for the month of October. So what should you do now? Stock up your first aid kit, check the batteries, make sure they're not corroded in your flashlights or torches, as some people call them. Maybe start thinking about some non-perishable foods, things you need for the babies, diapers, like that. And then once it gets a little bit closer, you need 1 gallon of water per person per day, and you want that for 7 days. That's something good to start getting on hand here. And then, of course, cash. I know people are like, what do you mean cash? Cash will be king when there's no power. You'll be able to barter and buy things with that cash, Jordan.
Yes.
That we're dealing with this morning. In Kansas, still many power outages. 35,000 in Kansas customers without power. Reno is the one with the most power outages. That's where that reported tornado was. Winds here gusting 80, even 90 miles an hour into Fowler, Kansas. Very potent storms kind of merging together. Watch them merge together right around here in Kansas, and then they bow out. So there's one cell, there's another, and then look how they bow out over Emporia. It was just a really rough day. Now, Now, this right here I think is interesting. Do you see that little spin? That's our little vorticity max, and that is going to be going eastbound. Why do you care about that? That gives you stormy weather. So where you have that little spin in the atmosphere, you're going to get it. There's also energy down into Kansas, crossing over into Arkansas, Missouri, very heavy rain up towards Miami, Oklahoma, still flash flood warning to the west of Tulsa, and then this little spin in the atmosphere with the heavy rain moving into Wisconsin. By the way, a lot of places in Iowa can actually use the rain, so we'll take it. There are still some drought conditions. That is all going to be making its way eastbound. You can't really see it on the water vapor, but you can see that there's plenty of moisture in the mid to upper levels of the atmosphere. Here is our jet that is streaming in, and then the system that we're going to deal with for our Tuesday actually is off the southwest coast. So it'll be pretty interesting to see that kind of just race across the United States and give us a bigger threat for severe weather tomorrow. We do have some mid-level southerly winds coming in. That could really give us a punch to these storms. And Chicago, Milwaukee, you're a more earlier in the day thing. And then as we head later in the day, it really fires up here into Nebraska, parts of Iowa. We could see some larger hail there around North Platte. That's where it could be 2 inches or greater. Again, that is lime or egg-sized hail. And then winds also 75 miles an hour or greater. So it's going to be a stormy day. There's that little spin for you, and watch it spin its way across the Great Lakes. Milwaukee, Chicago getting it around lunchtime. Green Bay as well. That continues making its way across Lake Michigan, and look at the damaging winds it's going to bring into Michigan. And we will see the storms fire up for us as we look back 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock. Even as the sun goes down, things are still raging for us here into Nebraska and Iowa, and even into South Dakota, Minnesota. With our Torcon value of 3, it's actually a higher chance of tornadoes as we head into tomorrow. But Jordan, we cannot rule them out today.
So you mentioned Nebraska.
Includes Houston. 219,000 customers are without power. That heat and humidity has those heat indices around 100 degrees. Today it's like 95, tomorrow 101. It's going to be hot for us. And notice as we go through today, as I mentioned, we'll get up into the mid 90s, which means that it is extreme. And the thing is that this is going to be the story really for the entire week. We do not get a break from these intense heat indices. So this is what it says on the thermometer, but don't forget you factor in that humidity, and that's what's going to bring that temperature up to right around 100 degrees. Lots of sunshine, absolutely no rain, which is kind of good and bad. You want the rain to cool you off, but you don't want it for all those cleanup efforts. So if you do have a generator in your home and you want to make sure that you operate it safely, outdoors, never in a home or your garage. Do not plug into the wall. Heavy-duty extension cords, and turn the generator on before plugging any appliances into it. That's really key. Look at the heat, though. It's not just Houston. It gets into the Midwest. It gets into the Northeast, where Boston by Wednesday will be 20 degrees above average. We're talking the upper 80s. That heat is going to sustain us here. As you've been wanting summertime feels, you're going to get it. Even Chicago well above average. I mean, 10, 15 degrees above average for a lot of us here as we go through the week. 87 tomorrow in Chicago is just absolutely wild. And as we look at San Antonio, not only do we have the high temperatures, you have some of that humidity, our heat indices are going to be around 100 degrees today. And that's really kind of the story for a lot of people, is that not only do you have the warmth, but notice up in the Midwest, you've got some moisture, right? We have these storms coming in. That's going to keep our heat index up there for us. So, Jordan, you want to stay hydrated in a cool place, and strongly consider canceling those outdoor activities.
Storms has been the name.